Kettle Creek Conservation Authority wishes to acknowledge the Treaty of the Traditional Lands originally occupied by the Indigenous First Nations people, the Anishinaabe, Attawandarock, and Haudenosaunee Nations. KCCA strives to build meaningful relationships with Indigenous communities and recognizes the importance of respecting these treaties and lands. Does any member have a disclosure of pecuniary interest? Seeing none, we'll move on to the minutes of the last meeting, January 15th.
Mr. Chair, sorry to interrupt. Can I just do a roll call so we can verify who's online before we start the meeting?
Sure.
So Todd Noble.
Yeah, present.
Lori Baldwin-Sands.
Present.
Frank Burrs.
Present.
Jim Herbert.
Present.
Grant Jones.
Here.
Sharon McMillan.
Present.
Jerry Pribble sent regrets. JJ Strybosh sent regrets. Sam Trousseau.
Present.
And John Wilson.
I think that was an acknowledgement. I think so. I thought it was a cop.
Mr. Chair, we have no, we have quorum.
Okay. Minutes of the last meeting. Any comments, concerns?
I will move it if you want.
Frank moves, Jim seconds. Call the vote or?
Lori Baldwin-Sands.
Yes.
Frank Burrs.
Yes.
Jim Herbert.
Yes.
Grant Jones.
Yes.
Sharon McMillan.
Yes.
Sam Trousseau.
Yes.
And Todd Noble.
Yes.
And that motion passes.
Okay. Media report, Betsy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just some media highlights from the past month. Trees are available for purchase for landowners, and we've been doing lots of site visits with landowners, as well as trying to get the word out there that we're looking for crew members for our conservation areas this spring. And lastly, just acknowledging the change to vice chair and chair for this year.
Thank you.
I'll take project tracking. So over the last month, lots of year-end things that people are working on. So we completed the audit. We'll hear more about that later in the meeting. Our seasonal job applications are up on the web. Snow surveys have continued, but we've been pretty lucky in terms of flood or high water events over the past month. We've submitted various applications to funding proposals and have undertaken some work at both campgrounds to build some compounds for some materials. And staff have been doing some training as well, completing some small drinking water systems to keep us up to speed for administering the Lake Whitaker's drinking water system.
Any questions for Elizabeth? Grant?
Thank you, through Chair. Elizabeth, with regards to the ice on Kettle Creek, is there any concerns? As we've had an extremely cold winter, so there should be a fair amount of ice buildup on the river that there's creek at this time.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I'll let Jen Dow, I believe she's online if she wants to answer that.
There we go. Thank you, Mr. Chair. We've been doing bi-weekly snow survey and ice surveys, snow surveys and monitoring of the ice down in Kettle. The Lake Erie has about 6 to 12 inches of ice. It's been fluctuating recently with the warmer weather. And the Kettle in the harbor has about 6 to 12 inches of ice as well. So far with the weather, it's been pretty consistently cool with some warmer trends, and we haven't had a lot of rain, which is nice. So hopefully that will contribute to a slower melt rather than one of those quick, rainy, high temperature situations that would be conducive to an ice jam. So far the weather looks like it's going to slowly melt, but things, as you know, in the spring can change pretty quickly. So we'll be keeping an eye on it.
Thank you. Any other questions for Jen or Elizabeth? Seeing none, we'll move to the Elgin Clean Water Program. Betsy?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Next slide. The annual report for the Elgin Clean Water Program was in your advance package. I just thought I'd highlight a few things for you. So just as a reminder, the program is open to farm and non-farm landowners across Elgin County and has been in place since 2012. And basically the program provides funding to landowners to be able to take environmental projects on their property. And we do receive annual funding from Elgin County as well as the Green Lane Community Trust Fund. So just some highlighted the numbers overall since 2012, we've completed 340 projects. Total project costs are exceeding $3.9 million. And the total funding from the Elgin Clean Water Program is over $933,000. An interesting fact, 43% of the projects to date since 2012 have been wetland creation projects. Next slide. And here's just a map showing the distribution of the projects across the county. So as you can see, good distribution across all of the municipalities and townships. Couple of highlights from this past year and the annual report. 22 projects were completed last year, and you can see the breakdown of the projects there. We provided $72,000 in grants to projects across the county. Total project costs approached $250,000. We find matching funding for the grants as well. So we work with Ducks Unlimited, Elgin Stewardship Council, or Alice Elgin to help landowners find as much funding as possible. And landowners also contribute their own in-kind and cash contributions. So here's just a highlight of some of the wetland projects that were created this past year. Wetland creation, like most years, was the highest category of projects completed. We had 11 wetland projects implemented. Next slide. This was an erosion control project in Bayham. So there was some surface water runoff issues on this farm that were impacting the agricultural land. So CA staff designed a solution which included berms and structures to help slow that water and convey it down the gully in a safe manner. This next project was in Dutton Dunwich. You can see an area adjacent to Lake Erie there up on the bluff. 5 acres of prairie was planted on this site to restore habitat for shoreline species and create biodiversity, and a mix of over 15 species of native grasses and wildflowers were planted. Next slide. We also had a large-scale restoration project occur. This doesn't happen too often, but this site was about 11 acres between the 2 agricultural fields. It just wasn't conducive to farming anymore, so the landowner looked to retire the fields from production. We created 2 wetlands, 1 on each field, and then the remaining areas were restored. So 3.5 acres were planted surrounding the largest wetland cell into tallgrass prairie, and the remainder of the fields were planted into trees last spring. Next slide is just highlighting some of the testimonials that we received in 2024 from the landowners that took part in the program. So just basically, landowners continue to convey that without the funding, these projects wouldn't be possible, and just that staff are able to help them through the paperwork and make the process as easy as possible. And that's everything.
Thank you, Betsy. Does anybody have any questions?
Thank you, through the chair to Betsy. Just a question, with the erosion control project in Bayham, it looks like they're plowing down the hill back up, or at least tillage. Do you ever suggest that they contour opposite direction to slow the water down?
Yeah, so that project would have been led by Paul Gagnon from Long Point, but often when the solutions are being designed and developed, there's conversations with the landowners about practices that would help to lessen the erosion overall.
I have a question.
No, go ahead.
So it's through the chair to Betsy. So a lot of interesting and important things that were done here. And this, you did over 340 projects we've completed throughout the year. My question is, are there any major projects that weren't started? Was a disappointment to you that you couldn't get done, or that you'd have to do next year? Or are you all successes, everything, you're pretty happy with everything done? There's nothing in the background you would like to have done?
Chair through to Jim. Typically, we're pretty good for funding, and we're always looking for additional funding to support the projects. And we often have a list that are ready for the next year, but overall, there is enough funding to support the projects that are coming forward.
So nothing disappointing that didn't get done. Well, thank you. Good work.
Right?
You too.
Yes, it was coming. But, is this because there's funding available now, or is there more of a kind of a thought process where I want to do this stuff as a landowner? What is it, a combination of the two, or are they just more open to it now, or what?
Through the chair, through to Frank. So luckily enough, since 2015, 16, we have had annual funding from the county and the Green Lane Community Trust Fund. So that's helped us to build the name of the program. We do a lot of advertising. And now what we're finding is, neighbors, people do a project and tell their neighbors. So you sort of see that word of mouth spreading as well. But the key thing is having like annual sustainable funding so that people know when they have an idea that there's something there to support it.
Gotcha. Okay, thank you.
Great, just thank you through the chair to Frank, just to further that conversation. A lot of the farm organizations, whether it's Elgin Federation or whatever, also support this idea, and I would say challenge the farmers to get involved in that conservation. So it's a two-pronged approach, I would say.
Excuse me. Okay, good.
Okay, any other questions? So we have a recommendation to receive the staff reports.
So moved.
Sam? Seconded by Grant. All in favor? Sorry.
Sure. Baldwin Sands,
Yes.
Burrs,
Yes.
Herbert,
Yes.
Jones,
Yes.
McMillan,
Yes.
Purcell,
Yes.
and I believe John Wilson joined.
Yes. I came into Burford. I got some Wi-Fi now.
Thanks, John, and Todd Noble,
Yes, it's at the bottom.
and that motion passes.
Yeah.
Okay, moving on to correspondence, we have an invitation from Lower Thames Valley Conservation Authority for their annual general meeting, February 20th. And a letter from the City of London about Jerry Pribble's leave of absence for this month.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, so nothing to add there. If any members are interested in going to the Long Point annual meeting, certainly let me know and I can reply on our behalf. And then just noting Jerry Pribble's leave of absence for the month of February. It only really becomes a concern for the AGM. And I think I've sent out a notification to members that we will need every member that we can to attend the AGM so that we can pass the budget. So I think we're fine. Sam's able to attend that meeting and I think we have quorum for it. But if your schedule's changed, please let me know today or we can have a discussion at the end of the meeting.
Okay, Grant?
Thank you, Chair. So I intend on doing the Lower Thames one since I'm there in Southwold.
Yeah.
But that's the intent right now. That could change being 40. So with regards to AGM, that's the day of the mayor's luncheon. So if we can expedite that, so I can leave when I have to leave. So I'm pretty sure I'll have to leave before the meeting's done.
Okay. So, Mr. Chair, to that point, the meeting is scheduled, the AGM is scheduled to begin at 10. Last year, it was only a 40-minute meeting, and I would expect that would be the same this year. So we'll try to keep it short because I do realize there's more than one member that's hoping to get to that other meeting. So that should, I think, give you enough travel time.
We need to leave by about 11, Grant.
Yeah, the latest, yeah.
Would you want to start earlier than 10, 9:30 or? Is it if you want?
I think that works.
10.
It'll work, Grant, that's
Okay. So we're good with that?
Yep, we're good.
Okay. We need a motion.
Motion to accept.
Can you get a mover and seconder to Grant? Jim?
Baldwin Sands,
Yes.
Burrs,
Yes.
Herbert,
Yes.
Jones,
Yes.
McMillan,
Yes.
Trousseau,
Yes.
Wilson,
Yes.
Noble,
Yes.
and that motion passes.
Okay. Moving on to statement of revenue and expenses, draft audit financial statement, staff report.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm just gonna start with just a brief statement from staff. The audit did occur from January 21st to 23. We ended with a positive year-end position, just slightly higher than I predicted. So we have about 188,000, mainly due to the high interest rates, staffing vacancies, and unanticipated fees for service that were realized in the year. Well, we budgeted for about $128,000 to draw down from reserves. We only ended up using about 18,000 from reserves, mainly to balance the tree planting program, and that was well under what we predicted to pull from reserves for that program as well. So that was good. Overall, there's a net gain to both the capital reserves and the operational reserves, and I think from staff's perspective, a very successful year. But I would invite, the main purpose of this meeting is to look at those draft statements, ask questions, and we'll fully approve them at the annual meeting later this month. But Scott Travers and Jim Frederick are here from Graham Scott Ends to present the financial statements in detail and answer any questions that the board might have.
Okay, does anybody have any questions for Elizabeth on that? That's a good news story that we ended in a positive note. Okay, and draft financial statements, turning the floor over to Scott.
I guess I get tasked with this, yeah. Okay, so as Elizabeth said, I'm Scott and this is Jim. We're from Graham Scott Ends. So we're gonna go over parts of the audited financial statements for December 31st, 2024, the Kettle Creek Conservation Authority. It's going to consist of the auditor's report and some select reports from the financial statements. It's not the entire financial statements. I believe you guys have provided all those in your package, so we can ask questions if you have those at the end. The first page that's presented up there, we call that the management responsibility for financial reporting, so an acknowledgement that management prepared the financial statements and all the internal reporting to make sure that's reliable information. And we as auditors would come in and kind of audit this report and those systems and controls. Okay, so we ask the management to attest to that. I bring that to your attention because there's a distinction between the auditor's report and the financial statements. Financial statements are responsibility of management and your folks here, those charged with governance, and we come in with the auditor's report. Okay, so click through that. So here's our independent auditor's report. Okay, the first section of the auditor's report is our audit opinion, which outlines what we audited, that being the financial statements and the notes to the financial statements, and then explains our opinion. Our audit opinion is that we issued unqualified opinion on these financial statements, and their audit concluded the financial statements of the authority were free from material misstatement. So I'm going to read our audit opinion. We have audited the financial statements of the Kettle Creek Conservation Authority, which comprise the statement of financial position as of December 31st, 2024, and the statement of operations and accumulated surplus, statement of changes in net financial assets, statement of cash flows for the year that ended, and the notes to the financial statements, including summary of significant accounting policies. In our opinion, the organization's financial statements present fairly in all material respects the financial position of the organization as of December 31st, 2024, and the results of its operations and its cash flows for the year then ended in accordance with Canadian public sector accounting standards. That's our opinion. The next section of your auditor's report is the basis for opinion. Kind of see how there's different bolds there, different paragraphs. This outlines that we concluded our audit in accordance with applicable Canadian auditing standards. The next section is responsibilities of management and those charged with governance for the financial statements, which we kind of briefly touched on with the original letter. It outlines the responsibility of management and those charged with governance, which is to say that the financial statements, notes, and controls to appropriately reflect the transactions are management's responsibility. The next section, the bottom paragraph there, auditor's responsibility for the audited financial statements. That's at the bottom of page 2, and going to the next page. That outlines our auditors, as are we are auditors and our responsibilities. This section outlines a little of what an audit is, and that we're looking to obtain reasonable assurance that the statements are free from material misstatements, and that we'll communicate any deficiencies or finding with those charged with governance. So if we found anything during the audit, we bring it to your attention. Okay, so that is our auditor's report, and we'll sign off on that auditor's report once the financial statements are approved, which I believe will be at the AGM. Going to the next page here. Can't see too much on the board there, but the next page included is a statement of financial position, which shows all the authority's assets and liabilities as of December 31st, 2024. So it's the organization owns is their assets, and what it owes is the liabilities, with comparative figures with December 31st, 2023. These are further broken out into financial assets, such as our cash, short-term investments, and receivables, for a total of 2.2 million. The financial liabilities, such as payables, services that perform for us that we haven't paid yet, and revenue deferrals of $811,000, and the non-financial assets at the bottom, such as TCA or tangible capital assets of 4.2 million. With the total of these assets in excess of liabilities to be the accumulated surplus at December 31st, 2024 of 5.6 million. The next page is a statement of operations. Get through that, thank you. An accumulated surplus for the full year ended December 31st, 2024, with the comparative budget and December 31st, 2023 figures. So these figures presented outline the authority's revenue by type, so your grants, user fees, etc., approximately 4 million, and the expenditures by segment or program, what it costs to run those programs of 3 million, showing net financial statement surplus of 984. In the agenda package, like I said, there's a full set of financial statements. I'm not going to go through, but they'll include other statements such as the statement of cash flows, change in net financial assets, and a full set of explanatory note disclosures as required to be in conformance with Canadian public sector accounting standards. So they'll explain how the organization reports its transaction, significantly high policies, and then there's obviously be some other notes that will expand on some of the notes that were some of the numbers that were on there. You'll see the reference to note 1. Note through 13, things like that. So those will tie into those. So though I didn't go through too much detail of the figures or fluctuations, it should be noted that these statements were reviewed and discussed with management prior to this meeting, and that there were no discrepancies with management from results and figures previously provided to the board, and that the financial statement report issued is an unqualified audit opinion, right? And that these financial statements are free from material misstatement. So we as auditors also provided in the board package the audit findings letter, which is required communication to those charged with the governance, to report the results of the audit. So in this letter, it summarizes topics like disagreements with management and reporting, issues with internal controls, and significant estimates that were made, or specific risks that we arise from our audit. I guess to summarize quickly to the results of that audit and document in that letter is that there's no significant issues to report from our audit based on those topics. We consider a significant audit finding. So that has concluded the presentation, unless there's any questions about what was in your package there.
Anybody have any questions? Right?
Yeah, just, I read note 11 under revenues. Other revenues and grants, you say note 11, it's up. It's $1.5 million. What was budgeted was 466. Does this have anything to do with the land donations? Is that what it is? Okay, it doesn't say it in the note, but I presume that's what it was. Okay.
Through the chair to Frank, there is another note elsewhere in the financial statements that mentions, I think it's almost $700,000 in land donation.
So
and then there was other capital funds that were received in the year as well that's contributing to that.
Okay, any other questions? The recommendation.
Yeah, can we?
Here
we go. So as Scott mentioned, this is just an opportunity to present the draft financial statements and welcome any feedback from the members. So really we're just that the report on the draft audited financial statements be received and that the audit planning and finding letters be executed. That's the motion we're looking for today. And then the financial statements will actually be passed at the annual meeting.
On the finding letter, the date of that letter is also the audit report date, which will be the annual meeting date.
Okay. Any other questions? Mover and our seconder? Frank? Sam? Call the vote.
Baldwin Sands,
Yes.
Burrs,
yes.
Herbert,
Yes.
Jones,
Yes.
McMillan,
Yes.
Trousseau,
Yes.
Wilson,
Yes.
Noble,
Yes,
and that motion passes.
thank you, gentlemen.
You're welcome.
Well done.
Good year.
Moving on to new business. Draft 2025 budget update, Elizabeth?
Mr. Chair, so similar for the board members, this is just another chance to look at the draft budget. It was sent out earlier. And simply to note that we haven't received any communication back from our member municipalities on the draft 2025 budget. I'd just like to briefly highlight a number of exciting projects that the budget includes this year. So that we've got some things lined up for the Dalewood Dam. There's different hydro upgrades that we're considering for the campgrounds. We talked about some capital upgrades for the office as well in terms of carpet. Just go through that. And we're also managing some floodplain and mapping updates in this budget and keeping our computers up to snuff as well. So the other thing I wanted to highlight just in terms of where our revenue is coming from, the 2025 budget is pretty consistent where we've been in years past. So trying to keep that municipal portion down, but you can see how significantly we try to drum up self-generated revenues. So 46% is self-generated, 15% is coming from reserves this year. And the rest coming from municipal apportionments. Next slide. In terms of our reserves, Sharon did ask about that. There should have been information on that in your advanced packages, but again, just to highlight, because of the year that we had in 2024, the reserves are starting with good, strong balances for 2025 and support those drawdowns that we've discussed in the past in terms of hitting each one of those reserves. So the operational reserve, we've tucked money in there to handle the expense of the Dalewood Dam environmental assessment. We've got some money coming out of reserves for updated regulation mapping, and we do plan to submit some funding proposals that are matching funds to continue floodplain mapping updates as well. And our watershed rehabilitation reserve is again helping to support that tree planting program. But I'm pleased to see that reserve number coming down as we self-generate more funds to help that program as well. And the wage subsidy reserve is a little high this year, but again, we're just it's a protection. A cautionary drawdown there, just not knowing how well the cabins are going to perform this year. So I don't expect that full drawdown will be needed as well, but it is included. So really pleased with the 2025 budget and how we continue to manage expenses and continue to push for self-generated revenue to undertake some of the projects at the authority. So the budget will be passed officially at the annual general meeting. It is a weighted vote. So again, just encouraging you to attend to make sure that you get your say.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for Elizabeth? Jim?
I do through the chair. I keep reading last 4 or 5 months about clean water. Is there a change in the status of our water in Canada or in Ontario than what it was 5 years ago? Is this why we're spending so much money on clean water? There's a big article on it in the Toronto Star on clean water. So I'm just curious. I see we're budgeting again for stewardship, whatever. Under
Mr. Chair, to Jim, the Clean Water Initiative that supports stewardship projects in our local watershed. It's a static number that we've used to support projects locally for some time. So nothing new or no new concerns about clean water. I think you'll hear a lot about clean water again over the next couple of months because I believe it's the Walkerton anniversary this year. So that might be why you're seeing a little bit more press on it. But it's an ongoing thing that we always have to be conscious of, but no increased concern this year.
I took a one-day water course with Nigel Belchamber.
Oh, yes.
And he emphasized, it's really a local problem, but there were so many problems that should have been corrected before that ever happened. And it was that, it wasn't really the fact the water was bad because human error, basically. And yet, I know it's a 1-year anniversary, but anyway, clean water. I know we have to have clean water. There's no how the emphasis now seems to be, let's get better at it. Has it been that bad? I don't know. I'm just rambling because I saw it in the Toronto Star, the article, so.
Grant?
Just my observation on clean water, living beside the same creek for 60 odd years. From what it was when I was a kid mucking around the creek all the time to now is night and day difference. It used to be muddy all the time. Now it's, for the most part, if I went down and looked at it right now with the water flowing, it's clean. So there is big changes mostly with some of the erosion over the years.
Any other questions? Seeing none. Recommendation for the information of members, do we need a?
I don't necessarily think you need a motion there. It's just an updated draft.
Okay. Lake Whitaker cabin rules, fees, procedures, Michael?
Mr. Chair, I'm gonna try to take this for Mike and Jessica have been doing a lot of work in prepping this report for you. So definitely a team effort. But I'll start with some brief comments, and then Mike and Jessica can jump in if there's any questions from members. So you all recall it was a $200,000 donation that has enabled us to take this exciting project on and introduced initially 4 cabins at Lake Whitaker in the Lakeshore area. We're working towards having those cabins available for public availability on May 1st. But in order to do that, we need some items and changes in policies and fees approved by the board to get this underway. So today we're going to be presenting basically 4 main things. We're going to look at our conservation area rules and regulations, updating them with a specific section on the cabins. A 2025 fee schedule that has, we need to update that to include a nightly rental fee for the cabins. The third thing is our refund policy, and then we're also recommending the introduction of a cabin reservation permit specific to the cabins. Next slide. So in terms of the cabin policies, these cabins are a significant investment for the authority. And the staff did a lot of background research into other agencies that are offering these types of cabin rentals and have basically mirrored a lot of the policies that we're introducing today based on their best management, but also on lessons learned from those organizations in terms of setting up different rules and policies for these. So one thing is that the permit holder must be at least 25 years old to rent the cabin. There will be a minimum 2-night stay required, no walk-ins. So there is a significant amount of staff time that will need to go into prepping the cabins. So little bit of cleaning that's done on that. So wiping down mattresses, vacuuming the cabins out ready for the next reservation. So we want to make sure that people are committing to the cabins. The occupancy limits, one cabin can sleep 2 people and the other cabins sleep 4 people. So we do need to abide by those occupancy limits for each one of the cabins. Only 1 dining shelter is allowed and no extra sleeping shelters will be accommodated on the site. And again, that's to basically protect the viewing of the sites as well as the capacity of the sites themselves, and to ensure that we're not going over occupancy limits in the cabins themselves. This one, no pets, smoking, vaping, open flames, or indoor cooking in the cabin. And I think that rule is probably self-explanatory in terms of a wooden building. Next one. And there's furniture and amenities that are included in each cabin rental. So each one comes with beds. There's chairs, Adirondack chairs that are on the deck and barbecue outside of the cabin. So our expectation is that those furniture doesn't get moved around inside or outside. Check-in time will be 3 p.m. and checkout time will be 11 a.m. So all of those rules and regulations you can see in your advanced package were added to our existing rules and regulations under a separate cabin section. Next. And then we've done a maximum stay of 7 nights. Again, these are meant for transient camping. They're not meant for monthly or seasonal camping. And I think the other reason we introduced the 7 nights rule is to encourage cabin turnover and make sure a number of individuals get to enjoy these cabins. When we looked at the fees, staff went out and looked at a number of other conservation areas, but also private parks that offer similar cabins, and tried to compare us against cabins that are offering the same amenities. So you can see on the screen the sample that staff went out to establish the comparisons. So we have the mattresses are available by most of them. Some offered air conditioning, we're not offering air conditioning, fire pits and grill, and whether water was available near the site as well. So in reviewing that, the average nightly cabin rate right now is $157. Staff are recommending a nightly cabin rate of $145. So just under that average. And but we think that will be attractive to people and be able to cover our costs as well in terms of these. Cancellation, reservation, and change fees will align with our existing camping fees. Next one. The refund policy, due to the nature of the cabins, and again, the significant outlay that we have to do to prepare them and the staffing that has to be on hand to accommodate some of these reservations, we are asking people to get a full refund for a cabin rental to give us 7 days prior notice to the day of their arrival. If they fail to give the 7 days notice, they would not receive a refund. So next bullet. And if they shorten their stay for any reason, there would not be an automatic refund provided for those scenarios as well. So next bullet. And the final bullet, this is already in keeping with what we have for our campsite rentals, but there would be no refunds under any circumstances for long weekend cancellations, unless 7 days advance notice is given as well. The final step that we're introducing is an actual cabin reservation permit. So people reserving the cabins can do so online, similarly as they do now for a campsite. And they will, upon arriving at the campground, have to fill out a camping permit, or camping permit, just the way that they would do if they were reserving a campsite. We're asking them to fill out or acknowledge basically an additional cabin permit. And the purpose of this is just to make them aware of all of those cabin rules, as well as making sure that they realize that we're holding them and saving them harmless from any damages and liability with the authorities. So in terms of those rules that I went through, they will see those when they reserve the campsite on our website. They'll see them again in a confirmation letter. And then a third time when they arrive at the campground, they'll actually be asked to sign off on those rules that are specific to the cabins as well. So those were the four components that we're looking at introducing to roll out the cabin reservations. And by having your approval now, we can get those things in place on the website and look to start advertising the cabins through the March period.
Okay.
Great.
Just wondering, so I want the comment, it's a joke, so no fun is allowed. Just 32 rules, oh my God. So if somebody damages something, they've signed this agreement, but how do you, like, so staff assess what the damage is and they're stuck with that, right? So you're gonna say, you owe us $300 because you damaged this and this and this. How do you collect that? Do you take a credit card in case you need, collecting from these people would be a problem, I presume, maybe, if they contest it. Can you comment on a little bit of that or not?
Maybe I'll let Mike comment on that, who did the research with some of the other campgrounds that are doing this already.
Yeah, so the main thing is with the consideration of a security deposit was considered as well. And I, again, after researching some of the other CAs and getting their feedback, determined that they, with the pricing scenarios they have and whatnot, it was something that they weren't noticing as an issue.
Okay, so not an issue.
That it was not really being brought up as something that came up in the years that they've been doing it, that hasn't been a problem coming up. But at least by signing off on this document, then if something were to come up that was of some kind of substance and whatnot, then we'd be able to then go and.
Okay, thank you.
Jim?
To the chair, want me to go to Mike? A couple of questions. I don't see any mention of washrooms, facilities, or the shower facility.
Yeah,
First
so
question.
through you, Mr. Chair. So no washroom facilities at the cabins. The cabins are a single room, but each one is very close by to the washing facilities in the Lakeshore campground that have the toilets and hand washing there, and then the other two bathrooms that are in the campground have showers, so they're walking distance away. So there are showers on the property, but the closest bathroom to these cabins are just washrooms, but then there are shower facilities nearby as well.
Okay, second question. I noticed further down here, I read no dogs. A lot of people have dogs. Well, I can see the pros and cons. What about a service dog?
Yeah, so with the pets, really, again, the consideration was for potential damage to the cabins, then somebody else coming in afterwards with the allergies and whatnot was the main concern. But I would imagine that a service dog would just be something that would be kind of an extenuating circumstance where that consideration may be allowed. But I think, yeah, a service dog is a little bit of an extenuating circumstance.
I can see the reason for dog. Personally, for us, we have a schnauzer. Never outside, sleeps inside, take him out. Yeah. And he never barks, never does anything. The other side of the coin, someone's got a big German Shepherd and barking all night. So maybe some people wouldn't want to come because they can't bring their pets, but a lot of people take their pets everywhere. You see them on airplanes now.
Yeah.
Even at the airports, they have facilities for dogs to go to the bathroom.
Yeah.
Before they get on the plane. So it's not uncommon for people to say, hey. So who's going to monitor if somebody just brings their dog and doesn't ask you?
Again, through you, Mr. Chair, is that just be part of the regular duties for all the conservation area staff and whatnot, just monitoring all our other conservation area rules. Yeah. And I mean, yeah, if somebody comes in, we're not going to be going in and checking that cabin and whatnot. If somebody does bring that dog in, we're not going in looking for that specifically. But yeah, that'd just be kind of part of our process and through our regular monitoring of the other conservation area rules to monitor if that's being done as well.
Is that the same at provincial parks? I can remember I used to camp years ago when people brought their dogs. Is that something new now?
Yeah, and I think for the rest of our campground is very pet friendly and whatnot. And if you're coming camping, pets are definitely allowed. It's just for the investment of these cabins. So it's just for the cabins. Pets are.
See what happens with it, I guess. Okay, thank you.
Lori, did you have a question?
Yes, I did. Is there any flexibility when it comes to the cabins that sleep 4? If there is a family with 3 young children, for example, are you allowing that type of flexibility with occupancy?
Getting through you, Mr. Chair. So with the cabins we have and the furnitures we have provided and whatnot, so at this point we are recommending just keeping it at the cap of the 4 to keep those occupancy levels the same. And that's our recommendation. If there was somebody with a small child, perhaps some considerations for that, but just trying to keep consistent with the occupancy limits of the furniture provided in the cabin.
And if I could, my thought was if somebody brought a bassinet, so they have a
Yeah.
young family.
I think in that situation, again, with a young child, again, in a bassinet, something that would definitely, I could see some considerations for that situation there.
Thank you for that flexibility.
Good. That's good.
Mr. Chair, if I may, I think staff have had those types of discussions internally. And if you remember, the long-term planning is if these cabins are successful, there's a couple of other sites that we can accommodate additional cabins. And I think at that time, we might look at one that has a higher occupancy for situations of a family, a core family that's more than four people. So we might have an opportunity to accommodate a cabin that has an occupancy of 5 or 6 for those situations too.
And if I may add for you, Mr. Chair, as well, is that something also at the end of this year, we also do hope to kind of do a review to see, okay, is there something that we might have to consider for next year, kind of based on feedback and how the first season goes, to review afterwards and see if there's any potential considerations for changes or feedback that may help kind of guide direction moving forward as well.
Perfect. So this is a starting point, and then as we,
Flexibility.
find how it works, then we can do more.
Yeah.
It totally makes sense to maybe not build the Taj Mahal right out of the gate.
Yeah.
So,
This will evolve.
yeah,
He'll bring out his measuring tape for the bassinet and say, no, you're over by 2 inches.
Yeah.
All right.
any other questions?
Mr. Chair, if I might, just for the members online, we can't really see everybody. So if you do have a question, I hope we haven't missed anyone. You might just need to interrupt us if we haven't seen your hand to acknowledge a question.
Okay. Mover and seconder for the recommendation that the staff report on Lake Whitaker cabins, rules, fees, and procedures be accepted. And further, that KCCA rules, regulations, refund policy, cabin permits, 2025 conservation area fee schedule, and other associated documents and procedures be updated to reflect the changes in the staff report. Jim moves. Seconder. Lori, did you want to second that?
Yes.
Thank you. Call the vote.
Baldwin Sands,
Yes.
Burrs,
Yes.
Herbert,
Yes.
Jones,
Yes.
McMillan,
Yes.
Trousseau,
Yes.
Wilson,
Yes.
Noble,
Yes.
and that motion passes.
Okay, moving on to February planning and regulation report.
Mr. Chair, it was included in the advance package. Unless there's any questions, we're just looking for receipt.
Okay, anybody have any questions? No? Grant moves, seconder.
Sure, yes.
Baldwin Sands,
Yes.
Burrs,
Yes.
Herbert,
Yes.
Jones,
Yes.
McMillan,
Yes.
Trousseau,
Yes.
Wilson,
Yes.
Noble,
Yes.
and that motion passes.
Okay. Motion to move into close. Grant moves,
No, I can.
seconder for close.
Sure.
Frank,
Baldwin Sands,
Yes.
Burrs,
Yes.
Herbert,
Yes.
Jones,
Yes.
McMillan,
Yes.
Trousseau,
Yes.
Wilson,
Yes.
and Noble.
yes.
And that motion passes.